Made with Spoken. Playing God, The DNA Chronicles, by Just Wilder. Digital narration performed by multiple digital voices. Chapter 23. Alpha's Shadow. Alpha Magnus stood at the panoramic window of his private office, the city sprawling beneath him like a meticulously planned game board. Night had cast its velvet cloak over the metropolis, the newly installed grid of lights pulsating with a brighter manufactured vitality that mirrored the Infinity Institute itself, powerful, controlled, and subtly artificial. He swirled the aged scotch in his glass, the amber liquid catching the faint light from the holographic displays that flickered silently on his mahogany desk. Below, in the ordered chaos of the urban sprawl, the unenhanced masses went about their lives, oblivious to the silent power struggle to unfold in the glass and steel towers that pierced the night sky, oblivious to the game he was about to play. Genevieve, the name played in the cavern of his mind, a mixture of grudging respect and simmering contempt. Once a brilliant scientist, a revolutionary even. Now, lost in her own delusions of grandeur. Immortality, her audacious triumph, had become her undoing. The very breakthrough that had elevated her to near mythical status within the Institute had, in his estimation, fractured her grip on reality. Hubris, he mused, a slow-acting poison, more insidious than any genetic anomaly. He took a slow sip of the scotch, the peaty tang of familiar comfort against the unease that had begun to coil in his gut. The Maya Lee incident, the whispers of Subject 7's disposal, Paul Chen's unsettling transformation, each event was a discordant note in the progress Genevieve had so carefully orchestrated. The board, ever sensitive to investor jitters and public perception, was whispering among themselves. Fear and uncertainty, these were not just whispers in the dark corridors of the Institute, they were levers he intended to use. A soft chime announced Carmen Leclerc's arrival. He turned from the window as she entered, her silhouette framed against the opulent doorway. Carmen, ever composed, ever efficient, moved with a quiet grace that belied the sharp intellect that lay beneath her polished surface. She was his most trusted advisor, a strategic partner whose pragmatic mind and unwavering loyalty were invaluable assets in the game of power.
Carmen.
Alpha greeted, his voice a low rumble.
Thank you for coming.
Of course, Alpha,
she replied, her gaze steady, assessing the subtle tension in his posture.
You sounded concerned on the comm.
He gestured to the seating area, a cluster of heavy leather armchairs arranged around a low table.
Concerned is an understatement. I am observing a pattern, Carmen, a disturbing pattern.
He settled into his chair, the supple leather conforming to his enhanced physique. Carmen mirrored his movement, her posture erect and attentive.
Genevieve's behavior has become increasingly erratic.
Alpha began, his tone measured, analytical.
Her pronouncements are more grandiose, her focus fragmented. The investor presentation, while initially successful, now feels like a carefully constructed illusion, masking a deeper instability.
Carmen nodded slowly, her auburn hair catching the light from a nearby lamp.
The Maya Lee demonstration was unsettling, even for those accustomed to the inherent risks of cutting-edge research. And the Reviver protest, while contained, exposed a vulnerability, a crack in the Institute's carefully crafted image of invincibility.
Precisely.
Alpha leaned forward, his gaze intense.
The board is starting to feel it, Carmen. The unease and uncertainty. They value stability above all else. And Genevieve, she is no longer projecting stability. She projects something else, something transcendent perhaps in her own mind. To them, it reads as chaos.
Carmen steepled her fingers, her expression thoughtful.
And you, Alpha, offer them order, control, a return to predictable progress.
He allowed a faint smile to touch his lips.
Indeed. Evolution, Carmen, properly managed evolution, is far more profitable than chaotic revolution, and far more palatable to those who hold the purse strings.
The board members.
Carmen consulted a small datapad, the screen glowing softly in the dim light.
Let's consider the key players. Thornton, risk-averse, values long-term stability. Chen, pragmatic, driven by profit margins. DuPont, susceptible to influence, concerned about public perception. We can leverage their anxieties, Alpha. Present a clear alternative, a steady hand at the helm.
Thornton and DuPont are our primary targets.
Alpha stated, his voice decisive.
Chen will follow where the prevailing wind blows, as always. We need to subtly guide Thornton and DuPont, plant the seeds of doubt regarding Genevieve's leadership, and highlight the risks of her increasingly unconventional approach.
Subtlety is key,
Carmen emphasized, her gaze meeting his directly.
A direct challenge would be premature, potentially counterproductive. We need to operate in the shadows for now. Whispers in boardrooms, carefully placed data leaks, gentle reassurances of stability and controlled growth.
A shadow war.
Alpha mused, the phrase resonating with his strategic mind.
Played in boardrooms and back channels, not open conflict yet.
He paused, his gaze drifting back to the city lights below.
And then there is Liora Atwood.
Carmen's eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes.
Dr. Atwood? Her rapid ascent within Genevieve's research team is noteworthy. Her expertise is undeniable, but her sudden integration feels accelerated, even for Genevieve.
Accelerated and convenient,
Alpha observed, his tone laced with suspicion.
Her brother's reviver connections are concerning. Is she a genuine convert, Carmen? Or something else entirely?
Carmen considered for a moment, her analytical mind dissecting the available data.
Her public statements align with the Institute's ideology. Her research contributions are significant, and Genevieve seems to have taken a personal interest in her.
Personal interest?
Alpha repeated, the phrase tinged with skepticism.
Genevieve's personal interests are rarely altruistic. Asset or liability, Carmen? Atwood. For Genevieve? For us?
Potentially both, Alpha.
Carmen replied, her voice measured.
Her skill set is valuable. Her reviver connection is a vulnerability, but also potentially exploitable. Information is key, Alpha. And leverage. We need to understand her motivations, her true allegiance.
Surveillance,
Alpha stated, the word like a command.
Intensify surveillance on Genevieve and her inner circle. Fei Lin, Julian Renard, and now Liora Atwood. Every communication, every movement, every deviation from routine. I want to know everything.
Carmen nodded, her expression resolute.
I will ensure Silas is briefed immediately. Discreet and comprehensive, as always.
Discretion is paramount,
Alpha reiterated, his gaze hardening.
We are not at war yet. We are simply ensuring the Institute's stability. And mine.
He raised his glass of scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the dim light.
To shadows, Carmen, and the power they conceal.
Carmen raised her own glass, a crystal tumbler filled with water, a testament to her disciplined lifestyle.
To shadows, Alpha, and the order they can bring.
Later that night, Alpha found himself in a starkly contrasting environment, the Institute's surveillance hub. The opulence of his office was replaced by the sterile hum of advanced technology, the warm glow of mahogany and leather replaced by the cool luminescence of holographic displays. The air here was thin, filtered, carrying the faint smell of warm electronics, a world away from the rich scent of aged scotch and leather. Silas Draven, the Institute's head of security, stood ramrod straight amidst the banks of monitors, his posture as unwavering as his loyalty. Silas was a product of Alpha's own rigorous training, a man forged in the crucible of military discipline, his efficiency and unwavering obedience making him an invaluable asset.
Director Magnus.
Silas greeted, his voice devoid of inflection, his gaze fixed straight ahead, even as Alpha approached.
Silas.
Alpha acknowledged, his presence commanded even in this utilitarian space.
I need to discuss surveillance priorities.
Director's directives are anticipated.
He replied, his movements precise as he gestured to a central console, displaying a complex matrix of surveillance feeds.
Full spectrum monitoring protocols are active, per standing orders.
Alpha moved to the console, his gaze scanning the real-time feeds, a dizzying array of data streams flickering across the holographic displays. Corridors, labs, offices, even private residences. The Institute's pervasive surveillance network captured every detail, every movement within its domain.
Dr. Boucher.
Alpha began, his voice cutting through the sterile hum of the hub.
I need a complete and real-time feed of her activities. Movements, communications, research logs, everything. No detail is too small.
Dr. Boucher's surveillance priority elevated to level 1.
Silas confirmed, his fingers flying across the console, reallocating resources, intensifying monitoring protocols.
Real-time data stream established, archived and cross-referenced. Predictive algorithms engaged for anomaly detection.
Extend that to her inner circle.
Alpha continued, his gaze unwavering.
Fei Lin, Julianne Renard, as well as anyone on her immediate research team. I want to know their interactions, their communications, any deviations from established protocols.
Inner circle surveillance protocols engaged.
Silas confirmed, his efficiency almost unnerving.
Personnel files cross-referenced. Communication logs decrypted. Movement patterns analyzed. Anomaly triggers are set for deviations exceeding established parameters.
Alpha paused, his gaze narrowing as he focused on a specific feed, a live view of Lab 7, Maya Lee's containment pod still faintly shimmering with residual energy.
And Dr. Liora Atwood,
He added, his voice deliberate, emphasizing the name.
her rapid integration warrants close attention. Her reviver connection is a variable we need to understand.
Silas's gaze flickered momentarily to Alpha, a subtle acknowledgement of the shift in priorities.
Dr. Atwood. Noted. We will allocate additional resources to her surveillance. Discreet and comprehensive, as always, Director. Her reviver affiliation, flagged and prioritized for deeper analysis.
Prioritize her monitoring, Silas.
Alpha reiterated, his voice firm.
I want to understand her motivations, her loyalties. Is she playing a role? Or is she a genuine convert? Perhaps even a pawn in a larger game I have yet to fully comprehend.
Motivations and loyalties assessment initiated for Dr. Atwood.
Silas confirmed, his fingers again working the console.
Psychological profile cross-referenced with reviver network data, behavioral pattern analysis engaged, linguistic algorithms deployed for communication decryption. Real-time risk assessment protocols activated.
Alpha nodded, a grim satisfaction settling within him.
Discretion is paramount, Silas.
He repeated, echoing his earlier conversation with Carmen.
We are not at war yet, but information, Silas, is power, and in the shadows, power is control.
Silas remained silent, his unwavering gaze fixed on the swirling data streams. A silent embodiment of the Institute's pervasive surveillance, Alpha's silent shadow, extending its reach, tightening its grip, preparing for the coming storm. Control, order, hierarchy. Alpha thought, as he turned from the humming consoles, the sterile glow of the surveillance hub receding behind him. These are not just principles, they are necessities, the pillars of civilization, the foundations of progress. Genevieve's chaotic vision, her messianic delusions of transcendence, threatened to dismantle everything they had built, unleash forces she could not possibly comprehend, let alone control. He would not allow it. He would step out of the shadows when the time was right, and reclaim the Institute, reclaim control, restore order. For the good of the Institute, for the good of humanity, and most importantly, for his own ascendance to the true seat of power. He was not Genevieve's shadow. He was the architect, patiently building his own empire in the spaces she had carelessly left unguarded. And Liora Atwood, the intriguing wild card, would be watched, assessed, and, if necessary, played. In the game of shadows, everyone was a potential piece, and Alpha Magnus was always playing to win. Chapter 24. The Transfer. Liora watched as the medical team carefully prepared Marcus for the transfer from the Infinity Institute's critical care wing. Each disconnection of a monitor, each adjustment of a line, felt like a step away from the intense environment of critical care, even though she knew, logically, this transfer was indeed a step towards continued recovery and a less acute phase of care. Around them, the critical care unit of the Infinity Institute, where Marcus had been receiving intensive care, was still unlike anything Liora had ever seen before. She had worked at some great hospitals, but nothing quite like this. The beeping of monitors, which had been a constant, comforting rhythm there, a soundtrack to the quiet battles fought daily within those walls, would soon fade into the background as they moved to the medical wing. Marcus had improved dramatically, and now it was time for Marcus to move. It was time to move on to a different phase of healing in the medical wing. Phelan stood beside her, a study in professional composure, her gaze fixed on the medical staff, her posture rigid and efficient. But Liora, attuned to the slightest shifts in Faye's carefully maintained facade, saw the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw, the slight tremor in her fingers as she adjusted her glasses. Faye, for all her institute polish, was not immune to the weight of this moment. Liora nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with a complex knot of emotions. Gratitude for Marcus being brought back from the precipice, a fragile sliver of hope for Marcus, and a growing unease about the path she had chosen. She watched as the Institute transport team, figures clad in pristine white biosuits that rendered them almost featureless, efficiently took over, their movements precise and devoid of any wasted motion. They were like extensions of the advanced technology they wielded, instruments of a healing process that felt both miraculous and chillingly detached. Within minutes, the Institute team secured Marcus onto a sleek, automated transport bed, a marvel of engineering that hummed softly as it levitated inches above the floor. The Institute team, silent and efficient, moved, gliding out of the critical care wing and into the sterile, brightly lit corridors that would lead them to the medical wing. Liora walked beside the bed, Faye a step behind, the rhythmic swish of the automated doors and the quiet hum of the transport bed, the only sounds breaking the tense silence. This is it, Liora thought, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. Leaving one world behind, stepping into another. A world of miracles, they promise. But what kind of miracles are born in places like that? Places so cold, so clean, so inhuman. The journey was swift and silent, the pod gliding through subterranean tunnels with effortless speed. Liora watched the walls blur past, smooth, featureless surfaces illuminated by soft, diffused lighting. A world devoid of texture, of imperfection, of anything that might hint at the organic chaos of the surface world. She felt a growing sense of displacement, of being untethered from reality, suspended in a liminal space between worlds. When the pod finally came to a halt, the doors hissed open, revealing a corridor that was breathtaking in its sterile grandeur. "Welcome to the medical wing, Dr. Atwood." Faye's words echoed in Leora's mind, a pronouncement delivered with professional poise, but lacking any genuine warmth. And as Liora stepped into the Infinity Institute's medical wing, she understood, with a chilling certainty, that she had entered a world where humanity itself was being rewritten, redefined, and perhaps, ultimately, lost. The corridors of the medical wing were an exercise in clinical perfection. Gleaming chrome and pristine white walls stretched into the distance, illuminated by soft, diffused lighting that seemed to emanate from the very structure itself, casting no shadows, leaving no room for imperfection. Thin and almost ethereal holographic displays, embedded in the walls, flickered with streams of data, medical schematics, and abstract patterns of light, silent pronouncements of the advanced technology that permeated every inch of this space. As in the critical care unit, the air was different here, colder, thinner, filtered and purified to an almost unnatural degree. It carried no scent of humanity, no hint of organic life, only the faint, almost imperceptible aroma of ionized particles. The silence was profound, broken only by the quiet hum of advanced machinery, the hushed tones of the medical staff, and the soft swish of automated doors opening and closing. Liora walked beside Faye, her senses overwhelmed by the sheer scale and sterile perfection of the environment. Automated systems glided silently along the corridors, carrying medical supplies or delivering precisely calibrated doses of medication. Figures in pristine white biosuits moved with quiet, almost robotic efficiency, their faces masked, their movements precise and devoid of any superfluous gesture. They were like living components of the technology that surrounded them, extensions of the Institute's hyper-controlled healing process. "Welcome to the medical wing, Dr. Atwood. Here we move beyond conventional limitations." Faye's voice, professional and measured, broke the sterile silence, drawing Leora's attention back to her guide. Faye gestured to the surrounding environment, a subtle sweep of her hand encompassing the gleaming corridors and advanced technology.
We are confident we can offer Marcus a path forward.
Faye's words were carefully chosen, measured, offering assurance without the promise of miracles, hoped for outcomes without guaranteeing salvation. Liora nodded, her gaze sweeping over the environment, taking in the sheer scale and unsettling perfection of it all.
It's incredible, Faye.
She spoke just above a whisper, her voice a mixture of awe and unease.
The technology, the scale of it all.
Incredible, yes, undeniably so. But also intimidating, alienating, profoundly unsettling. It was a place of healing, perhaps, but also a place that felt utterly divorced from the messy, unpredictable reality of human life. Faye offered a tight, professional smile, a carefully calibrated expression that conveyed efficiency, not warmth.
The environment is controlled, meticulously so.
Faye explained, her tone factual, almost clinical.
Every variable is monitored and optimized. Air quality, temperature, humidity, even the biosignature resonance of the space itself. It's essential for the efficacy of the treatments.
Essential for efficacy, Liora noted. Not for comfort, not for human connection, but for pure, unadulterated, scientific efficacy. As they walked, Faye continued to explain the intricate protocols of the medical wing, detailing the advanced diagnostic systems, the bioregenerative technologies, and the personalized treatment plans tailored to each patient's unique genetic and physiological profile. Her words were precise and technical, painting a picture of a medical approach that was light years beyond anything Liora had encountered at St. Mary's. It was breathtaking in its scope, its ambition, its sheer technological prowess. And yet, with each carefully articulated explanation, Leora's unease grew, an icy knot tightening in her stomach. Controlled, optimized efficacy. The words echoed in her mind, devoid of warmth, devoid of humanity. This isn't healing, is it? It's engineering. Human beings reduced to variables, optimized for a predetermined outcome. Is this what saving Marcus means? Turning him into another data point in their grand experiment? They reached Marcus's designated room, a private suite that felt less like a hospital room and more like a luxurious, sterile isolation chamber. The automated door swished open, revealing a space that was spacious, uncluttered, and bathed in soft, diffused light. The walls were pristine white, the surfaces smooth and unblemished, the air utterly devoid of scent. A sleek bioregeneration pod dominated one corner, its interior glowing with a soft, pulsating light, a silent promise of cellular renewal and genetic repair. Advanced monitoring equipment lined the walls, holographic displays flickering with intricate data streams, feeding a constant flow of information back to the Institute's central systems. The bed itself, a marvel of bioengineered comfort, seemed to adjust and conform to Marcus's form as the transport team efficiently transferred him from the automated bed to the advanced medical platform.
Welcome to your room, Marcus.
Faye said, her voice softening slightly as she addressed him directly, a rare hint of personal warmth breaking through her professional facade.
Everything here is designed for your comfort and recovery.
Comfort and recovery, Liora noted, words that sounded almost hollow in this hyper-sterile, technologically saturated environment. Marcus, his eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and wonder, gazed around the room, his gaze lingering on the bioregeneration pod, its soft, pulsating light casting an ethereal glow across his pale features.
Lee, wow,
He whispered, his voice still weak, but clearer, stronger than it had been in days.
this place, it's like something from a dream.
A dream, or a nightmare, Liora thought, depending on what kind of awakening awaited them at the end of this journey. The Institute's medical staff, efficient and silent, connected Marcus to the room's advanced monitoring systems, adjusting sensors, calibrating equipment, and starting the initial treatment protocols. Their movements were precise, practiced, devoid of any unnecessary interaction.
The protocols here are intensive.
Faye explained, her voice low, addressing Liora while the medical staff worked around them.
Initially, Marcus may experience some disorientation, some sensory fluctuations. It's a necessary part of the regenerative process.
Disorientation, sensory fluctuations, euphemisms for what, Liora wondered? Neural rewiring, genetic reprogramming? The language of science, she realized, could be as opaque and manipulative as any political doublespeak.
What exactly will the treatment entail?
Liora asked, her voice carefully neutral, seeking technical details, but also probing for reassurance, for some hint of humanity in this sterile, technologically overwhelming environment.
Can you explain the initial steps?
Faye nodded, launching into a detailed explanation of the Institute's multifaceted treatment approach, outlining the genetic therapies, the cellular regeneration protocols, and the neural enhancement sequences that would be tailored to Marcus's specific condition. Her words were precise, technical, a torrent of scientific jargon that washed over Liora, both impressive and strangely distancing. It was clear, undeniably clear, that the Institute possessed capabilities that were beyond conventional medicine, beyond anything she had ever imagined. But with each technical detail, with each promise of cellular renewal and genetic repair, Liora's unease deepened, a cold certainty settling in her heart. This was not just medicine. This was something else entirely, something far more profound, far more transformative, and perhaps far more dangerous. As Faye continued to explain the intricacies of the treatment protocols, Marcus stirred slightly on the advanced bed, his eyes fluttering open, his gaze focusing on Liora, a faint flicker of awareness returning to his clouded eyes.
Lee,
He whispered, his voice barely audible, yet carrying a note of wonder, of something akin to relief.
I feel warmer.
He paused, taking a shallow breath, his brow furrowing slightly.
Less heavy. Is that even possible already?
Liora's heart lurched, a sudden surge of hope, fragile yet potent, flooding through her. He felt better, already. In this sterile, technologically saturated environment, something was already working. Something was already changing within him. Hope, a treacherous, dangerous emotion, flickered to life within her.
Maybe.
She answered, her voice thick with emotion, forcing a weak smile.
It could be, Marcus. Maybe different could be better than dead, remember?
The words, a desperate echo of her earlier bravado, felt both hollow and profoundly meaningful in this moment. Marcus managed a small, returning smile, a ghost of his old humor flickering in his eyes.
Remember how I used to joke about wanting to be a cyborg?
He whispered, his voice gaining a fragile strength.
Maybe I'm getting my wish after all.
A cyborg, Liora thought, a chillingly apt description for what the Institute seemed to be offering, a merging of human biology and advanced technology, a transcendence of human limitations, at what cost? He looked at her then, his gaze searching hers, his young eyes filled with a wisdom that belied his frail body and his childlike wonder at this new, advanced world.
Are you okay with this, Lee?
He whispered, his voice laced with a concern that mirrored her own internal conflict.
Really okay?
Liora hesitated, the weight of her deception, her double life, pressing her. How could she answer him honestly? How could she tell him of her unease, her growing distrust, her fear of the Institute's true agenda, when this place, was technology, offered his only hope? She forced a smile, a brighter, more convincing smile this time, pushing down the rising tide of doubt and fear.
I am, Marcus.
She said, her voice stronger now, laced with a forced conviction.
I'm okay. More than okay. This is amazing. They're going to make you better, Marcus. I know it.
And in that moment, as she looked at Marcus, his eyes shining with a fragile hope, his small smile a beacon in the sterile, technologically overwhelming environment of the Infinity Institute's medical wing, Liora Atwood made another choice. Another compromise. She would embrace this place, this technology, this no-win bargain, for Marcus's sake. She would play the role they expected of her, the grateful sister, the enthusiastic recruit, the loyal Institute scientist. Liora would bury her doubts, suppress her fears, and cling to the fragile hope that this terrifying, awe-inspiring, inhuman place could somehow, miraculously, save her brother's life, even if it meant sacrificing a part of herself in the process. As the medical staff completed the initial protocols and withdrew, leaving Liora and Faye alone with Marcus in the sterile suite. A familiar figure entered the room, her presence commanding, almost radiating an aura of power that filled the space. Genevieve Boucher. Genevieve moved with fluid grace, her enhanced physique radiating an unsettling vitality, her unwavering gaze fixed on Marcus, assessing, analyzing, calculating. She approached the advanced bed. She was a force of nature in this sterile environment, a god in her own domain.
"Welcome, Marcus,"
Genevieve said, her voice smooth, cultured, yet carrying an underlying edge. She smiled an actual smile, with genuine warmth and human connection.
"I just wanted to stop by and welcome you to the Infinity Institute."
Her gaze flickered to Liora, a brief, assessing glance, before she returned her focus to Marcus.
"Your family is a bit of royalty here, Marcus, and I bet you didn't even know that. Did you?"
Royalty, Liora thought. The word lingered, heavy with irony, with a chilling undercurrent of manipulation. Royalty, or lab rats. Test subjects in a generations-long experiment, engineered for the Institute's grand design. Genevieve continued, her voice regaining its smooth, almost hypnotic cadence, her gaze fixed on Marcus, as if assessing his very genetic code.
"We'll talk more as you return to full health, Marcus. Much more. You have a unique destiny, Atwood lineage, a destiny intertwined with the very fabric of the Infinity Institute."
Her words were cryptic, loaded with unspoken implications, promised whispers that felt both alluring and deeply, profoundly unsettling. And as Genevieve turned to leave, her gaze lingering on Liora for a moment longer, a silent, knowing look passing between them. Liora understood, with a chilling certainty, that the price of loyalty, the price of hope, was about to become terrifyingly clear. As Genevieve exited, leaving a lingering chill in the sterile air, Liora saw her chance. Faye had turned to adjust a monitor, her back momentarily to Liora. With practiced swiftness, Liora reached into her pocket, her fingers brushing against the cool metallic casing of the miniature data-gathering device. It was no larger than a button, a marvel of miniaturized technology, capable of recording audio, video, and even subtle biometric data, a tool provided by Kael, a relic of her past life as a reviver operative. Her heart hammered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against the sterile silence of the room. Now or never, a thought screamed in her mind. She had to plant it now, while Faye was distracted, while the opportunity was there. She moved with deliberate casualness, stepping closer to the advanced bed, ostensibly to check on Marcus. Her movements slow, measured, her gaze fixed on her brother, masking the frantic urgency of her actions. Her fingers brushed against the underside of the bed's control panel, a discreet alcove hidden from casual view. With a quick, almost imperceptible movement, she pressed the device into place, the magnetic adhesive securing it firmly against the smooth metal surface. A tiny click, almost inaudible, the sound echoing in her ears like a thunderclap. Done. The device was planted. Her double life within the Infinity Institute had officially begun again, and with it, a new, even more dangerous game had begun. A game where the stakes were not just her own life, but the life of her brother. Liora straightened, turning back to Faye, her expression carefully neutral, her heart still pounding a frantic rhythm. Faye turned back, her gaze sharp, assessing, but seemingly unaware of Leora's clandestine action.
The staff, they are very efficient,
Liora said, her voice carefully casual, a throwaway observation to break the silence, to mask the frantic energy that still thrummed beneath her skin.
Almost robotic.
Faye nodded, her expression thoughtful, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes.
Efficiency is paramount here, Liora.
Faye replied, her voice measured, almost echoing Leora's own carefully neutral tone.
Precision is essential, in scientific inquiry and in healing.
Precision, Liora thought, and control. The twin pillars of the Infinity Institute, foundations built on a chillingly detached vision of progress, a vision that promised miracles but demanded a price far higher than she could ever have imagined. And as she looked at Marcus, his eyes closed now, resting peacefully in the advanced bed, a fragile hope flickering within her, Liora knew, with a chilling certainty, that she had just paid the first installment of that impossible price. Chapter 25. Echoes of Genesis. The soft hum of quantum servers filled the vast digital archives as Liora's fingers worked across the holographic interface, her movements precise despite the tremor she fought to control. The blue-white glow of countless screens cast an ethereal light across her face as she maintained the pretense of routine cataloging work. Around her, other archivists moved with quiet efficiency, their presence both a comfort and a threat. 3 weeks into her working at the Infinity Institute, and every moment still felt like walking on a razor's edge. The weight of her Institute ID badge seemed to grow heavier with each passing day, a constant reminder of her precarious position. She couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. Something in the air felt charged with potential.
Cross-referencing historical trials data,
She mumbled to herself, maintained her calm as she navigated through the labyrinth of encrypted files. The holographic display responded to her touch, spreading out like a constellation of data points before her eyes. Genevieve has exposed so much of the Atwood familial ties to the early days of the Institute, and then when she had asked for time to think about all that had been revealed, nothing. She had expected Genevieve to pressure her for commitment, but nothing since. Was this a game? Was she serious? It couldn't be true, or could it? That's when she saw it. File designation, Project Genesis, subject files 2187-2189. Sunside, Atwood. Her heart stuttered. The surname could be a coincidence, she told herself, even as her fingers moved to initiate the decryption sequence. The system prompted for clearance she shouldn't have had, yet the files unlocked with surprising ease. Too much ease, a distant part of her mind whispered, but the thought was drowned by the pounding of her heart in her ears as the first images materialized. Her mother's face stared back at her from 25 years ago, the grainy footage unable to dim the familiar warmth in those amber eyes that Liora saw every morning in her own reflection. The woman on screen appeared impossibly young, barely older than Liora was now, with the same chestnut hair falling in waves around her shoulders. Beside her stood Liora's father, his familiar, powerful jaws set with determination, shoulders squared beneath a crisp white shirt as they both faced the camera. The sterile interview room behind them could have been pulled directly from the Infinity Institute's current facilities. Some things never changed.
Project Genesis volunteers exhibit optimal genetic markers for preliminary trials.
A clinical voice narrated from the footage. The words sent ice through Liora's veins as she gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white. The voice continued, each word falling like a hammer blow.
Subjects express full awareness of potential generational effects and consent to long-term monitoring of offspring.
Liora's hand flew to her mouth, stifling the gasp that threatened to escape. Generational effects. Offspring. The words echoed in her mind like a twisted mantra, as pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed, aligned with terrible clarity. Her whole life, her very existence, had been part of their experiment. Every childhood illness, every routine checkup, her exceptional strength, even her accelerated healing after that bike accident when she was 12, had they all been carefully documented and analyzed? The thought made her stomach lurch. She stared at her parents' youthful faces, searching for any sign of doubt or coercion, but found only that same quiet determination she'd always admired in them. Had they known what they were really agreeing to? Had they understood that their choices would echo through their children's DNA? Through her DNA? As she was about to log out, another file began to decrypt. She wasn't certain that she had initiated the decryption of the next file. She had been knocked off her equilibrium by the revelations. It was one thing for Genevieve to have told her, but to see the files, pictures of her parents, and knowing they had volunteered for this enhancement, knowing it would affect them, and their children. Then the file was opened, and she couldn't catch her breath. File designation, Project Genesis. Subject files 2172-2181. Surname, Boucher. There was Genevieve's mother and father having the same interview as her parents. Only something darker, far darker, was being discussed. Genevieve's mother was pregnant and agreeing to enhancement protocols being carried out on her unborn child while still in the womb. The timing had to be right. That child was Genevieve. She, like Liora, was born with natural enhancements. Her intelligence had always been superior to everyone else. And now Liora had a picture of the truth. When she told Marcus he was royalty, she of course thought of herself as the queen, and she felt the connection to the Atwood family. No wonder she had been so liberal with Liora in granting access and elevating her so rapidly. Her eyes darted to the nearest security camera, but her years of training with the revivers kept her outward appearance calm, even as her mind raced. She needed somewhere private to process this. Gathering the data onto a secure drive with trembling fingers, she logged out of her station.
Taking my break,
She announced to no one in particular, her voice steady despite the chaos churning inside. Liora watched her reflection in the polished chrome walls of the elevator, wondering if others could see the trembling beneath her carefully composed expression. The walk to the abandoned lab on the 3rd floor felt endless, each step echoing through the deserted corridor. She forced herself to maintain an unhurried pace, though every fiber of her being screamed to run. The abandoned lab stood like a tomb of forgotten science, untouched but not unremarkable. The moment the door sealed behind her with a soft pneumatic hiss, Liora's carefully constructed composure shattered. She slumped against a dusty counter, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps, as the weight of discovery crashed over her in merciless waves. The sterile smell of abandoned research equipment mixed with the musty air of disuse. Familiar, yet alien, like so much else in her life now. Glass beakers caught the dim light, casting fractured shadows that seemed to mirror her splintering reality. How many others came here before me, she wondered, eyeing the layers of dust that had settled over the forgotten equipment. How many other lives did they change forever in this room? With hands that betrayed her turmoil, Liora activated her secured tablet. The soft blue glow illuminated her pale face as she projected the files into the dim lab space. Then, like ghosts emerging from the past, her parents' voices filled the room, younger, vibrant, and filled with an optimism she'd never known them to possess.
We understand the risks.
Her father's recorded voice declared, strong and certain in a way that made her heart ache.
But the potential benefits, if we can help create a better future for our children, it's worth any personal cost.
The words hit her like physical blows. A long-buried memory surfaced, sitting in sterile waiting rooms, watching her mother grow paler and more distant during what they'd called her tired time. She'd been 8 years old, too young to have questioned why chronic fatigue required so many doctors, so many tests, so much secrecy. Now, cross-referencing the dates with trembling fingers, the truth revealed itself. Liora began to tremble and wasn't able to catch her breath, the world around turning gray. She was about to collapse, then she heard it. A security drone hummed past the lab's frosted windows, its shadows splashing across the floor. The brief interruption helped Liora focus, pushing back against the overwhelming tide of revelations. She needed to think clearly, to understand the implications of what she'd discovered. Her tablet chimed softly, an incoming message from Faye. The regular check-in she couldn't miss without raising suspicions. With fingers that still trembled slightly, she composed her response that she was on a break. She was desperate to send Kael a message, but knew better than to send any communications to Kael. She felt the subtle warning in her mind that told her she was being watched. After all, she was Kael's sister. Even Genevieve had questioned her about her connections to Kael, and after Julian's warnings, she would be a fool to not listen to the advice he had given her. Liora sat in the dim glow of her tablet screen, her heart pounding as the weight of revelation throbbed in her mind. The documents before her weren't just scientific data anymore. They were the keys to her own identity, transforming her understanding of who she was with each new detail she absorbed. And Genevieve. How much did she know about herself? Every childhood memory now demanded re-examination, flickering through her mind like an old film reel with new context. Her mother's recurring headaches, which had often confined her to darkened rooms. Had those been side effects? The way her father had religiously scheduled their blood tests, his hands always slightly trembling as he marked the dates on their family calendar. Most telling was their visceral reaction when enhancement debates first hit the media. Their shared looks of barely concealed panic, their emphatic warnings about the dangers of genetic manipulation. They hadn't just been concerned citizens. They'd been harboring a terrible secret.
They knew,
She whispered to the empty room, her voice barely audible.
all this time they knew what we were.
The tablet's soft beep startled her from her reverie, its blue notification light pulsing steadily. Another encrypted file had finished processing. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing video footage that made her breath catch. It was a follow-up interview. The timestamp placed it just months before her brother's birth. Her mother sat in a stark white consultation room, looking so young yet so careworn, with dark circles under her eyes and fingers that couldn't stay still. A voice came through the speaker. The doctor their family had always gone to, younger but still carrying that same self-assured tone that Liora had come to know.
We're seeing unexpected variations in the genetic markers,
He explained, his clinical detachment a sharp contrast to her mother's obvious distress.
The modifications appear to be more volatile in second-generation expressions than our models predicted.
Liora watched her mother's face crumple with fear.
But you can fix it?
The desperation in her voice was unbearable.
For the baby?
We're developing stabilization protocols.
The video feed cut abruptly, leaving Liora staring at a blank screen, her mind racing to fill in the gaps. She knew what came next, her brother's birth. His initially perfect health that slowly deteriorated into mysterious ailments that baffled doctors. All of it carefully orchestrated and monitored, she now realized, by the very institution she'd brought him back to. Her tablet chimed again, this time displaying a genetic sequence analysis. The complex strands of DNA twisted before her eyes, highlighted sections matching perfectly with her own medical records. Records she'd always thought were routine. But there, in the margins of the old reports, were notes. Second-gen enhancement stability achieved in Subject A. Subject B showing signs of rejection. Subject A. Subject B. She and her brother, reduced to experimental data points before they were even born. A sound in the corridor outside froze her in place. Footsteps, measured and purposeful, drew closer to the lab door. Liora's heart thundered in her chest as she quickly closed the files, muscle memory from her reviver's training, taking over as she assumed a casual pose, tablet angled away from the door. The footsteps passed by without pause, fading into the distance, but the moment of terror had crystallized something in her mind. She wasn't just uncovering her family's past, she was discovering the key to the Institute's future plans. Her own enhanced genetics, stable and successful, would be the blueprint they needed for their next phase.
Oh God.
She whispered, the full implications hitting her.
This is why Genevieve recruited me. She's been watching all along.
The truth was a double-edged sword, both weapon and wound, and Liora knew she had to wield it carefully. Her next moves would determine not just her fate, but what happened to Marcus as well. With practiced efficiency, Liora began closing down the files, ensuring her access left no trace in the system logs. She couldn't risk being discovered, not now when the stakes had become exponentially higher. This wasn't about exposing the Institute's plans anymore. It was about understanding her own past and possibly saving her brother's future. As she prepared to leave the lab, a final document caught her attention. It was a recent update to her brother's medical file, added just days ago. The language was technical, but one phrase stood out with stark clarity.
Subject exhibits optimal response markers for enhancement protocol Xavier.
Her brother wasn't just sick, he was compatible with their latest enhancement procedures. The realization hit her so hard it nearly took her breath away. The Institute hadn't been merely monitoring him. They had been waiting, perhaps even orchestrating events to reach this precise moment. Liora forced herself to breathe steadily as she secured her tablet and began methodically removing all traces of her presence from the lab. Her training with the revivers had taught her well. Leave no evidence, maintain cover, compartmentalize emotions until safety was reached. But her hand shook slightly as she wiped down surfaces she'd touched, her mind racing with implications. Somewhere in this building, Dr. Genevieve Boucher was moving pieces on a board Liora was only now beginning to see. The weight of genetic destiny, Liora wondered.
Will I be a pawn or a queen?
As she prepared to return to her workstation. Before leaving, she caught her reflection in a darkened screen. Her mother's eyes stared back at her, carrying secrets she'd never known to look for. The face of a woman whose very DNA had been sculpted by the organization she now fought against and was working for. Oh God, the irony wasn't lost on her.
Are you okay?
A voice startled her as she emerged from the lab. It was Dr. Fei Lin, her friend, one of the youngest researchers at the Institute. Her concern for Liora seemingly genuine.
Just needed some quiet to focus on cataloging.
Liora replied smoothly, her practiced smile sliding into place.
The archives can get overwhelming when you are not used to it.
Fei nodded sympathetically.
They say the weight of human knowledge can be crushing. Take care of yourself.
As Liora walked away, she wondered if Fei's words held deeper meaning. How many others in this facility knew the full scope of what they were involved in? How many, like her parents, had made choices thinking they were serving a greater good? As she worked, security cameras tracked her movements with mechanical precision. In her enhanced state, Genevieve watched through those same cameras, a slight smile playing across her features. Everything was proceeding according to plan, though Liora remained unaware of her role in the greater design. Her walking past that empty lab while Liora made her discoveries was a nice touch. It had made Liora feel safe in the belief that she had made these discoveries, and no one at the Institute knew how clever she was, all according to the plan. The afternoon stretched on, each minute a careful balance between maintaining her calm and processing the seismic shifts in her understanding. Other archivists came and went, their mundane conversations about lunch breaks and weekend plans a surreal counterpoint to the revelations churning in her mind. Near the end of her shift, another file appeared in her queue. This one containing detailed genetic profiles of successful enhancement recipients. Among them, she recognized names from the Reviver's watch list. The file had been flagged for her attention specifically, though she knew she hadn't set up any such alerts. Was this another breadcrumb, deliberately placed in her path? The thought troubled her. How much of her investigation had been guided by unseen hands? But whose unseen hands? Friend or foe? As she prepared to leave for the day, Liora caught a glimpse of Genevieve Boucher in the main atrium, engaged in an animated discussion with Alpha Magnus. The woman's presence seemed somehow larger than life. Her intellect practically radiated from her being. Had she known all this time exactly what Liora was? Had she been watching, waiting for this moment of discovery? The questions multiplied with each step toward the exit. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, gaunt, pale, now improving each day he was in the Institute's care. Would the truth change anything? His well-being was the most important thing in her life. She had been more than a sister to him for most of his life. Liora had bent her beliefs to honor his request to come here to save his life. She had to do this for him. She had to be his sister first and foremost. Sister. The word carried additional weight now. How many other families had been altered by Project Genesis? How many children carried modifications they knew nothing about? It had been happening for 40 years. My God, how many lives had Project Genesis affected, and they had no idea? As she passed through the Institute's security checkpoint for the last time that day, Liora felt the weight of her discovery settling into her brain. She was not a spy in the enemy's camp, but she felt like one. But she was also living proof of their earliest experiments, a bridge between past and present that neither side had anticipated. Somewhere high above, Genevieve Boucher watched Liora's departure, pieces moving exactly as she'd designed. The game was changing, but only one player knew all the rules. In her apartment that night, Liora began the painstaking process of analyzing every file she discovered. Each piece of data could be a weapon or a shield, depending on how it was wielded. For Brother's life, the future of the Revivers, and now her own genetic heritage hung in the balance. The truth she was learning wasn't just written in documents and data files. It was encoded in her very cells, a legacy of choices made before she drew her first breath. As she worked through the night, one question burned brighter than all others. In a game where even her own DNA could be used against her, who could she truly trust? Chapter 26. The Seduction of Marcus. Genevieve watched Liora's retreating figure on the surveillance monitors in her private penthouse. A flicker of something unreadable, something akin to amusement, perhaps even a sliver of genuine intrigue, danced in her eyes. Liora Atwood. Such a predictable creature, driven by the primal, messy human emotion of familial loyalty. Useful, in its way. Predictability, after all, was a tool, and Liora, in her desperation to save her brother, was proving to be remarkably pliable. Once Liora had cleared the Institute perimeter, Genevieve moved with purpose. Not to her labs, not to her command center, but downwards. Deeper into the Institute's sterile heart, towards the medical wing, and more specifically, towards Marcus Atwood's room. The corridors of the medical wing were hushed, pristine, a testament to the Institute's relentless pursuit of order and control. The air was cool, filtered, carrying only the faintest smell of ionized particles. Figures in white moved with silent efficiency, ghosts in a realm of advanced technology. Genevieve moved through them like a predator through tall grass, her senses picking up every subtle shift in energy, every whisper of communication, every flicker of light from the holographic displays embedded in the walls. She reached Marcus's room, the door gliding open at her approach, revealing the sterile luxury within. Her gaze swept over the space, assessing, calculating, and within seconds, she located it. A tiny anomaly, a subtle deviation from the room's perfectly calibrated energy signature. Liora's hidden camera. Amateurish, really, Genevieve thought with a flicker of disdain. Did the girl truly believe she could outmaneuver the Institute's surveillance network with such a crude device? Still, the attempt was endearing in its own clumsy way. It spoke of desperation, of a fierce protectiveness, qualities that, while ultimately futile against the Institute's power, were not entirely without value. With a swift, practiced movement, Genevieve approached the advanced medical bed. Her fingers, long and elegant, moved with surgical precision, tracing the smooth lines of the control panel. There, tucked beneath a discreet alcove, almost invisible to the untrained eye, was the small metallic device. A miniature camera, as expected. She deactivated it with a touch, a faint hum ceasing as the device powered down. No need for alarms, no need for dramatic displays. Control, true control, was silent, effortless, absolute. Genevieve pocketed the device, a small trophy of Liora's predictable, ultimately futile, resistance. Then, she turned her attention to the room's occupant. Marcus Atwood lay still in the advanced medical bed, his breathing even and shallow, his features relaxed in a semblance of peaceful slumber. Yet, Genevieve knew he was awake, aware, his enhanced senses registering her presence, even in his seemingly restful state. She approached the bedside, her movements fluid and graceful, then spoke, her voice soft and gentle, a stark contrast to the commanding tone she usually employed.
How are you feeling, Marcus?
Marcus's eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that were clear, focused, and surprisingly vibrant for someone who had been so close to death's door just weeks ago. A genuine smile, warm and unforced, touched his lips.
Much better, Doctor,
he replied, his voice stronger, clearer than Liora had described, filled with a vitality that had been absent for far too long.
Better than I have in years, it feels like.
A soft smile played on Genevieve's face, a display of warmth that would have stunned anyone who knew her public persona, the ruthless scientist, the cold visionary. But here, in the privacy of Marcus's room, she allowed a different facet of herself to emerge, a persona carefully crafted for this specific interaction, for this specific individual.
Please, call me Genevieve,
she said, her voice almost conspiratorial, leaning slightly closer to the bed.
And tell me truthfully, Marcus, how do you really feel?
Marcus chuckled softly, a low, appreciative sound.
Honestly, like I've been given a second chance. The treatments, they're remarkable. I can feel things waking up inside me, if that makes any sense.
He gestured vaguely to his own body, a gesture that spoke volumes about the profound changes he was undergoing.
It makes perfect sense, Marcus,
Genevieve assured him. She smiled, her eyes holding his with an intensity that was both flattering and subtly unnerving.
We are pushing boundaries here, transcending limitations. You are experiencing the very forefront of human evolution.
Evolution.
Marcus repeated the word thoughtfully, turning it over in his mind.
That's quite a thing to be a part of.
There was a flicker of awe in his eyes, a youthful wonder at the grand scale of the Institute's ambitions, a subtle hint of the very ambition Genevieve sought to cultivate.
Indeed.
Genevieve agreed, her voice dropping to a near whisper, as of sharing a profound secret.
And you, Marcus, you are more than just a participant. You are special.
She paused, letting the weight of the word linger between them.
Do you know who I am, Marcus?
She inquired, her voice like music to his ears, her gaze holding him captive. Marcus laughed again, a genuine, amused sound.
I know, of you.
He replied, a hint of playful irony in his tone.
Dr. Genevieve Boucher, the head of the Infinity Institute. The woman who's changing everything.
She chuckled, a low, throaty sound that was surprisingly melodic.
I'm not certain I want to know what you've been told about me.
She admitted. She smiled wider, a touch of self-deprecation in her voice. Marcus grinned in response, agreeing readily.
No, probably not. The revivers, they have opinions?
He paused, a shadow of seriousness crossing his features, a fleeting reminder of the world outside the Institute's sterile walls.
But I also see what you're doing here. The healing, the possibilities.
Possibilities,
Genevieve echoed, her expression turning serious, a strange intensity entering her eyes, the playful charm receding, replaced by a focused, almost hypnotic gaze.
That's the word, Marcus. Possibilities beyond anything humanity has ever imagined. And you are uniquely positioned to explore those possibilities.
She leaned closer, her gaze intensifying, her voice dropping even lower to an intimate tone.
Marcus,
She began, her voice a silken whisper.
we share a bond that no one else does, not even Liora.
She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, watching his reaction with keen interest.
We are the only people I know of who were given enhancement treatments while we were still in our mother's wombs, and it killed them both.
Her words lingered, stark, chilling, a sudden shift in tone that sent a subtle shiver through Marcus. He stared at Genevieve, his amusement fading, replaced by a dawning realization, a flicker of understanding, and perhaps a touch of shared vulnerability. He knew, intellectually, of the risks inherent in early enhancement procedures, the tragic stories whispered in hushed tones within the Institute's historical archives. But to hear it spoken so directly, so personally, by Genevieve herself, it was different, profoundly different. Genevieve continued, her voice softening again, a delicate balance of empathy and calculated manipulation.
It was primitive back then.
She almost whispered, a hint of sadness and regret in her tone.
Crude protocols, unstable sequences. My mother, your mother. They were pioneers, Marcus. Sacrifices made on the altar of progress.
Sacrifices. The word resonated with Marcus, echoing the sacrifices Liora had made for him, the sacrifices his parents and Genevieve's mother had unknowingly made decades ago. A strange sense of connection, of shared destiny, stirred within him, a subtle seed planted in fertile ground. Genevieve leaned even closer, her voice shifting to a tone of persuasive enthusiasm, her eyes shining with visionary fervor.
But enhancement, Marcus, it has come a very long way since then. Incredible leaps forward. We've refined the protocols, stabilized the sequences, unlocked potential that was unimaginable just a generation ago.
She detailed the advancements, her words painting a vivid picture of modern enhancement capabilities, of cellular regeneration, cognitive acceleration, neural pathway optimization, a catalog of scientific marvels that promised to transcend the limitations of human biology. Genevieve spoke of strength amplified beyond mortal limits, intelligence sharpened to a razor's edge, senses expanded to perceive realities beyond the grasp of ordinary humans. She spoke of longevity, vitality, a life unbound by the relentless decay of time. Finally, she fixed him with a direct, unwavering gaze, her eyes burning with an almost messianic intensity.
So, Marcus,
She asked, her voice low, seductive, almost hypnotic.
tell me, would it be enough for you to simply be healed, to be normal, to return to a life limited by the frailties of human biology, the inevitability of disease, the slow, agonizing decline of mortality?
She paused, letting her words linger and take root, allowing the stark contrast to settle in Marcus's mind. If anyone understood the frailties of the human body and the agony of the inevitable decline, Marcus had lived that nightmare for years of a short life. Normal, limited, frail, decline, words that suddenly sounded so inadequate, so ordinary, compared to the extraordinary potential she was now offering.
Or,
She continued, her voice rising with a subtle crescendo of promise.
would you like to be truly enhanced? To transcend those limitations, to become more? Super strength, heightened intelligence, senses that perceive realities others can only dream of.
She leaned even closer, her breath warm against his cheek, her gaze locking with his, holding him captive in the intensity of her vision.
I want you to be part of something very special, Marcus, something revolutionary.
Her hand, cool and elegant, brushed against his arm, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt of unexpected energy through his weakened system.
And
She added, her voice dropping to a final, seductive whisper.
I would oversee your enhancement myself if you want more.
The seductive offer drew Marcus in, a glittering temptation, a bargain whispered in the sterile sanctuary of the medical wing. Marcus stared at Genevieve, his mind racing, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirling within him. Awe, yes, undeniably. Wonder at the sheer scope of her vision, the breathtaking audacity of her ambition. Intrigue, certainly. A deep primal curiosity about the potential she was offering. The promise of transcending his own limitations, of becoming more. Beneath the allure, beneath the seductive charm of Genevieve's words, a flicker of caution, a subtle unease, stirred within him. Normal, she had said, with a dismissive curl of her lip, as if normalcy itself was a curse, a limitation to be overcome. But as her words lingered in his mind, a different thought sparked within Marcus. Stronger, faster, smarter. The images flooded his mind, a rush of pure fantasy. He dreamed of muscles coiling with power, of reflexes lightning quick, of thoughts that sliced through problems with effortless precision. For so long he had felt the weight of being less, of struggling while others seemed to glide through life. The idea of being superior, a word that tasted intoxicatingly forbidden, ignited a thrill within him, a forbidden ember that burned hotter than he cared to admit, even to himself, let alone Genevieve. But then, Liora's face flashed in his mind. Liora, who had given up so much, who had shielded him, supported him, loved him in his very ordinariness. The thought of disappointing her, of betraying the very essence of who they were together by craving this enhancement. It pricked at his excitement, a cold counterpoint to the heady rush. He looked at Genevieve, the internal conflict tightening in his chest.
I wouldn't want to disappoint Liora.
He said, his voice quieter now.
Not after everything she's done.
Genevieve simply smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes.
Liora is enhanced, Marcus. Ask her. If she's honest, she'll tell you she's faster and stronger than she should be, and her intelligence.
Genevieve gestured dismissively.
Well, her superior mind speaks for itself, doesn't it?
He thought of Liora, of her fierce protectiveness, her unwavering loyalty, her sometimes stubborn adherence to principles that seemed to stand in stark opposition to Genevieve's vision of transcendence. He thought of Kael, of his brother's passionate fight against the Institute, his warnings about dehumanization, about the dangers of playing God. Were they wrong? Were they simply blinded by fear, by a Luddite resistance to progress? Or was there a deeper truth in their concerns, a wisdom that Genevieve, in her godlike ambition, was overlooking? Marcus looked at Genevieve and saw a beautiful woman with a warm smile and intensely beautiful eyes looking at him. He felt she wanted him to be someone special to her. He wasn't certain what that special someone was, but he was willing to learn more, and he felt like he wanted to be around her more. It had been a long time since any female had shown interest in him besides his sister and the nurses, and theirs was not the attention that he craved. It felt good to be told he was special by such a beautiful woman.
More.
Marcus repeated, his voice thoughtful, hesitant, a subtle question woven into the word. He met Genevieve's intense gaze, his own eyes searching, probing, seeking a truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of her seductive offer.
What kind of more are we talking about, Genevieve?
The question lingered, unanswered, filled with possibility and peril, as Marcus Atwood found himself poised on the precipice of a choice that could redefine his life.
How much more do you want, Marcus?
Genevieve's smile widened, not in a predatory way, but with a lover's warmth, a comforting assurance that belied the revolutionary fervor that usually burned in her eyes.
Limitless more, Marcus,
she purred, her voice dropping to an intimate tone, as if sharing a precious secret.
Imagine a mind unburdened by the slow, clumsy processes of ordinary thought, a mind that can grasp complex equations in an instant, predict probabilities with near certainty, learn and adapt at speeds that would make even our most advanced AI seem sluggish.
She gestured subtly towards the holographic displays flickering with data streams, a silent testament to the Institute's vast computational power.
Think of the knowledge you could absorb, Marcus, the discoveries you could make, the problems you could solve. Humanity's greatest challenges, Marcus, the very things that have plagued us for centuries, disease, scarcity, even mortality itself, they could all fall before a mind truly enhanced.
Her gaze intensified, locking onto his, drawing him into the intoxicating vision she was painting.
And strength, Marcus,
she continued, her voice now laced with a hint of barely contained excitement.
Physical strength that transcends human norms, not just brute force, though that too if you desire it, but strength of resilience, of endurance, of vitality that shrugs off fatigue and injury like water off a duck's back. Imagine a body that doesn't betray you, Marcus, a body that is a tool of your will, not a cage holding you back.
She leaned back slightly, allowing the impact of her words to settle, her smile softening, becoming gentle. A calculated shift, designed to appear less overwhelming, more human.
But it's not just about power, Marcus, not in the crude sense that Alpha Magnus and his ilk understand. It's about potential, unlocking the latent potential within you, within humanity itself. It's about evolution, not just for you, but for the future of our species.
Her words resonated with profound conviction, a sense of destiny that was both alluring and subtly unsettling. Marcus listened, captivated, a part of him thrilled by the sheer audacity of her vision, the promise of power and transcendence. He had spent so long confined by his failing body, by the limitations of his illness, that the idea of breaking free, of becoming something more, was undeniably seductive. More than just healed, the thought echoed in his mind, a dangerous whisper of ambition taking root. More than just normal. The prospect of returning to a life defined by limitations, by the constant awareness of his own fragility, suddenly seemed small, almost mundane.
And what about the risks, Genevieve?
He asked, his voice quiet but direct, cutting through the intoxicating haze of her promises.
You mentioned my mother, your mother, sacrifices. There must still be risks, even with these advanced protocols.
He gestured vaguely at the advanced technology surrounding them. A silent acknowledgement of the Institute's power, but also a subtle probe, a cautious testing of the waters. Genevieve's smile didn't falter, but it shifted, becoming sharper, more clinical, a brief glimpse of the ruthless scientist beneath the carefully constructed charm.
Risks are inherent in any genuine progress, Marcus,
she acknowledged, her voice regaining its precise, measured tone.
Pushing boundaries always carries an element of uncertainty, but we have minimized those risks, mitigated them through rigorous testing, through decades of research and refinement. The protocols we are developing now are stable, predictable, remarkably safe, especially compared to the early days. Besides Marcus, you and I have a special advantage. Our mother's sacrifices enabled, or should I say prepared, our bodies for these enhancements. We are not the pioneers. We are the fruit of the seeds planted by those pioneers.
She paused, her gaze unwavering, holding his, challenged him to doubt her.
Of course,
she continued, her voice softening again. The warmth returned.
There are always variables. Individual responses can differ. The human body, even enhanced, is still a complex system. But for someone with your genetic profile, Marcus, someone with your inherent potential, the risks are minimal. The benefits, immeasurable.
Genetic profile. Potential. The words echoed Genevieve's earlier pronouncements about his Atwood lineage, about his special nature. It was flattering, undeniably so, to be singled out, to be seen as possessing some inherent quality that made him worthy of such extraordinary attention. But it also felt unsettlingly deterministic, as if his fate, his very identity, was being preordained by his DNA, by the Institute's grand design.
And Liora?
Marcus probed further, his gaze searching hers, seeking reassurance, or perhaps seeking a crack in her carefully constructed facade.
She's enhanced, you said. She's part of this potential evolution too?
Genevieve's smile became almost imperceptible, a subtle curve of her lips that hinted at a deeper, more complex understanding.
Liora is unique, Marcus,
she replied, her voice laced with a note of something that sounded almost like envy.
Her genetic makeup is exceptional, a rare convergence of factors that made her remarkably receptive to early modifications. She possesses a natural resilience, a stability that we rarely see in subjects from that era. She is, in many ways, a bridge, Marcus, a bridge between the old humanity and the new.
But she fought against you, didn't she?
Marcus pressed, his voice sharper now, a hint of defiance entering his tone.
Kael, the revivers, Liora was with them, against the Institute, against enhancement, as you envision it until I asked her to save me, not let me die.
Genevieve's smile tightened, losing some of its warmth, becoming more controlled, more Genevieve-like.
Liora is conflicted, Marcus,
she corrected, her voice regaining its edge.
She is torn between her loyalty to her brother, to her family, and her own undeniable potential. She sees the benefits of our work, the healing, the progress. But she is also burdened by sentimentality, by outdated notions of human limitation, by a misguided loyalty to a lost cause.
She paused, her gaze unwavering, and challenged him to disagree.
But you, Marcus,
she continued, her voice softening again. The seductive charm returned in full force.
You are different. You are not burdened by those limitations. You understand the necessity of progress, the courage required to transcend the ordinary. Marcus, you are a visionary.
Visionary. The word lingered in Marcus's mind, a glittering bait, a carefully crafted appeal to Marcus's deepest desires, his hidden ambitions. He wanted to be more than ordinary. He craved a life free from limitations. A life of purpose, of impact. And Genevieve, with her seductive words, her promises of power and transcendence, was offering him just that. Really, what he had dreamed of all those days and nights laying in that hospital bed. Dreams of being stronger, smarter, healthy, of being more.
How much more do you want, Marcus?
Genevieve repeated her question, her voice a silken seductive whisper, her gaze holding him captive, waiting for his answer. Waiting for him to succumb to the seduction of her vision, to the bargain she was offering. And in the sterile silence of the medical wing, Marcus Atwood found himself poised on the edge of a decision, his fate hanging in the balance.
Would it be all right for me to come see you again, Marcus?
Professional audiobooks in a click.
Spoken.